I swore I was done with these guys, but here we are again. So for those who do not know, Little Light Studios is a YouTube channel dedicated to shedding light on the evils of the secular world and reminding us all to follow God. The problem is that they are not afraid to lie, mislead, and recontextualize everything in the entertainment industry as being explicitly and intentionally anti-Christian. And this isn't the first time we've looked at them either. They've tried to claim that C.S. Lewis, the writer of the Chronicles of Narnia, and J.R.R. Tolkien, the creator of Lord of the Rings, both Christian authors, mind you, were members of a cult called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. After me and several others called them out on how this was a blatant lie, they later edited that part out of their video, though it is still up and available to view. Yes, go look at their video. They edited that out. They knew they got called on it and tried to hide that. They also argued that Star Wars was an anti-Christian narrative trying to teach Gnosticism. Why? Well, because George Lucas was inspired by the hero's journey developed by James Campbell. And James Campbell was a student of Carl Jung, and Carl Jung supported spiritualism. Yeah, if you're thinking that's faulty reasoning, I agree with you. They also argue that Luke Skywalker was inspired by the devil because his name is similar to Lucifer. Yeah, except they forgot that there's literally a book of the Bible called the Gospel of Luke. Was that also inspired by Lucifer? Yeah, you're starting to get the picture. They claim that Dragon Ball Z was satanic because there are characters in it who use magic and there are different rules to the afterlife. Even though Dragon Ball is a fictional fantasy world developed through Japanese cultural mythology and mythos, which is in no way connected to Christianity, but hey, I can't expect these guys to actually give a damn about outside cultures beyond their own. See, these people want to do one thing. Here's the reality. They want to terrify easily fooled Christians into thinking that the entertainment industry is their enemy and that they have to be afraid of everything. It's infuriating, but it's also troubling. There are many reasons I didn't want to ever respond to these guys again. The first reason is that all their videos come down to the same thing. They take a secular piece of entertainment medium and try to twist it or lie about it to make it sound evil or dangerous. And that just gets exhausting after a while because I end up making the same damn arguments. But the other reason is that I've gotten a lot of backlash from fellow Christians who support LED. People who, like them, fear everything having to do with modern-day entertainment, movies, video games, and anime. They throw Bible verses at me out of context, they accuse me of heresy, they accuse me of not being truly Christian, and then when I ask them for a discussion, or I ask them to explain themselves, or I try to have a debate, they either ignore me, or they just keep throwing accusations. And it gets exhausting. So I don't want to keep dealing with them, as I'm still dealing with it from my other videos in which I responded to LED. But I've been asked about 6 or 7 times now to look at this video of theirs about Nintendo. So fine. I think I got one more in me. Let's see what Little Light Studios has to say about the dark origins of Nintendo. First, as usual, we're going to change out the avatar. Good? Let's do this. What you got, LED?
We live in a world that's seeking a distraction, a diversion from the everyday activities of life. Reality seems broken to us, and our lives lack depth. And we're all seeking something beyond ourselves. Some seek excitement, some seek adventure or thrills. But what is the need for this distraction? It is because we are burdened. We are burdened with boredom, with guilt, fear, doubt, poverty, and hunger. We seek rest from these burdens, and so we escape into any other world we can. Drugs, money, violence, crime, music, movies, games, anything to make us forget our present pain.
Okay, so see, this is the subtle manipulation I'm talking about. See, notice the word association going on here. They start by implying that we are all exhausted, bored, guilty, and afraid. True enough. And so we seek escape from these things. Again, true enough. And he starts by saying that we escape to things like drugs, money, violence, and crime, all negative things with negative connotation. But then there's a pause before he follows up by saying music, movies, and games. The subtle association of these negative things combined with these other secular things is a sneaky way to associate them all into the category of negative. Music, movies, and games should be treated just as negatively as drugs, violence, and crime. All should be condemned and shamed. This is why LED is so exhausting. They want you to feel guilty about what you enjoy and what you do, and will gladly tie it into the worst aspects of society. Oh, you enjoy listening to music and watching movies to get away from the craziness of society? You're no different than a person who runs to drugs or crime to get away from the problems of society. And someone's going to say that's not specifically what they said. No, it's not, but they clearly tied the two together. That's the problem. It's subtle the way they do it. Let's keep going.
But the world has a real problem. Not only is it filled with guilt, fear, and doubt, and boredom, but there are people that want to make money off of the fact that you are not in control. Your pain, your bad health. For your boredom, they want to sell you video games. But beneath the noise and clamor, a still, small voice. A voice that says, "Come, come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." But the one solution to our problems becomes lost.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for using Matthew 11:28. I couldn't have picked a better verse with which to talk about this. Okay, so this verse is quoted all the time to encourage Christians to trust in Jesus when faced with hardships and troubles. But do you actually know the context of this verse? Jesus was talking to the people about the burdens laid upon them by the religious leaders of the day. The Mosaic Law, or the Law of Moses, was a series of laws the Jewish people were expected to live by, and the religious leaders of the time tended to add several man-made laws to the Mosaic Law and would often hold these laws over the heads of the people, weighing them down and causing exhaustion for the average Jewish person. Now, if you read Matthew 11:29 through 30, which comes right after 11:28, Jesus says, quote, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." A yoke, for those who don't know, is a wooden slab put on the back of an ox or donkey to help them pull a plow or carriage. He's saying that the yoke he offers is lighter and less of a burden on them than what the law gives them. Basically, the idea is that the lawgivers are putting so much on their shoulders, forcing them to do all these things. You have to live this perfect lifestyle. You have to follow all these heavy and difficult rules that we know you can barely follow, but you have to follow them so that we can feel better about ourselves. You have to follow these, and it ruins the Jewish people's lives. But Jesus says, I'm not expecting all that of you. My yoke is lighter. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. See, Jesus does not demand obedience for the sake of obedience or for power like the Pharisees did, because the Pharisees wanted obedience to increase their own standing and power, but Jesus doesn't need our obedience to be powerful. He's God. He doesn't need our obedience. He wants our obedience because it will give us relief, and it's the right thing to do. So, LED, with that in mind, you are the Pharisees that Jesus is talking about. You shout condemnation at people doing anything outside of what you deem to be right or wrong. You manipulate your listeners into thinking anything they like or find interest in is somehow evil and wrong, and they have to abide by every rule you lay down, or they're standing in rebellion to God. As you said in your Lewis and Tolkien video, the people who are not with you are guilty of putting Jesus on the cross.
But it's not just that we don't have things in common anymore. They are literally living for the side that put my Savior on the cross.
Right. You see everyone else as an other, as an outsider, as an enemy. People you would never dream of associating with. Remember? How could you play pool or poker with these people? Remember that? You said that.
Right. It's like, they beat up my mother. How can I go hang out with them and play pool and play cards with somebody that beat my mother up in the parking lot?
You place your own yoke on the back of believers, and it is very concerning. So, thank you, LED. That verse did far more than I think you anticipated.
And the voice of a loving God gets drowned out in the voice of people who poorly misrepresent him, and in the voice of those who would take his place. Could media, even interactive media, be allowing false gods and the occult into our homes? Gods to replace the one true God? How about video games? Could they be involved in this as well?
Okay, you say something very interesting here. You say that the voice of Jesus is drowned out by people who poorly represent him. Now, you're obviously talking about the modern media, but when you say that, I have to wonder, what about you, LED? Do you represent Jesus in the things you do? Or do you use his words as a weapon to lash out at those who don't walk in lockstep with your ideals and your rules? Look, it's no secret that the modern media isn't pro-Christianity. I won't deny that. And there's lots of things in the media that I don't condone or support, for sure. But you're not going after those obvious anti-Christian stories or issues, are you? No, you're going after Nintendo. You're going after Star Wars. You're going after Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon. You're going after two Christian authors for writing fantasy stories. See, LED, here's my problem. You don't deal with the obvious heresies and anti-Christian attitudes in the media. You deal with the ones you want to be anti-Christian. Now, you could make the argument that it is better to point out the hidden threats rather than the ones we're already aware of, but as I've proven many times, you're essentially trying to point at something that no one else sees as a problem, declare it a problem, and use the Bible to try and prove it by misquoting scripture, lying about the thing in question, or drawing massively inappropriate conclusions from literally nothing. LED, in a word, you're fearmongers. And that is not a good representation of Jesus.
Video games. A multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry that offer photorealistic worlds you can interact with and manipulate. You can be the hero and save the world, or, in some games, you can be the villain and destroy it. And although Nintendo did not invent the video game, that's where we'll begin. Video games did not come onto the scene until the 1960s, but Nintendo is actually older than video games. They actually got their start making gambling cards fashioned after 15th century European gambling cards. But how would European cards ever find their way to Japan? Well, in the 15th century, Portugal was the native home of a popular style of playing cards, dragon cards. These were forerunners to our modern playing card deck, and they have the same foundation as the tarot cards, with the suits: swords, cups, clubs, and coins. These are the same suits that eventually became the suits in our modern playing cards: spades, hearts, clubs, and diamonds. Often these cards were used in gambling, not much unlike our modern playing card deck. Sir Francis Xavier, a Portuguese priest for the Catholic Church, inadvertently is responsible for bringing gambling to Japan.
No, he didn't. Are you so stupid that you think cards are required to gamble? I guarantee the Japanese already knew how to gamble before the arrival of card games. Although, I will admit that the arrival of cards did likely lead to the inevitable arrival of children's card games, which would then lead to the heresy of card games on motorcycles.
Card games on motorcycles!
Card games on motorcycles!
Card games on motorcycles!
In August of 1549, Sir Francis Xavier came as a missionary to Kagoshima, Japan, in the name of a group for which he was a co-founder, the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. The men on his ship brought their Portuguese dragon cards along with them on the voyage, and were all too eager to teach the native Japanese not only how to play, but how to gamble as well.
Okay, you're assuming intention and motivation without evidence. You have no evidence that that was the goal of the sailors with Sir Francis Xavier. But even if they did want to gamble with the Japanese, how is that satanic? They just wanted to share in this card game. You are assuming a motivation and intention without any evidence. Shame on you.
As gambling spread, the Japanese government outlawed the act of private gambling. Thus, the people had to change their cards if they were going to keep them, and so they came up with the whimsical and colorful flower designs of the Hanafuda cards. 340 years later, Nintendo began to mass-produce these same cards, and these became Nintendo's main source of income for almost 100 years. Nintendo literally owes their business to none other than Sir Francis Xavier, the same man that suggested there should be an Inquisition. If this Jesuit priest had not accidentally brought gambling to Japan, Nintendo could never have existed.
Okay, so much with this part. First, Francis Xavier was the first missionary to Japan and is regarded very well among missionaries for his attempt to reach the people of Japan, India, and China. While it is true that he proposed the Goan Inquisition, he had no hand in it himself, and some even believe that he didn't intend for a full Inquisition, but someone to help oversee the church in Goa as an extension of the Portuguese church. You throwing in that the same man who also proposed the Inquisition shows me you're purposely trying to demonize this man, because his relation to the Goan Inquisition has nothing to do with his actions in Japan. I don't know why you brought it up other than to try and demonize him. Next, you implied that if Xavier had never gone to Japan with his cards, then Nintendo would never have gotten started. Well, the thing is, we don't know if that's true. First of all, the Portuguese were already in Japan before Xavier got there. They were selling matchlocks to the Japanese before Xavier arrived. So how do you know the cards weren't already in circulation before the arrival of Xavier? Secondly, Nintendo could well have found other ways to become profitable outside of just playing cards. You know, the thing is, if something is going to exist and someone has a dream to make something happen, they'll make it happen with or without the approval of others. And finally, your clear goal here was to blame Xavier and the Jesuits for the birth of Nintendo. Yes, because we should all be held responsible for things we have no control over. After all, Germany is the country Hitler was born in and would go on to rule. Therefore, Germany must be held responsible for the birth of Hitler. If Germany never existed, Hitler wouldn't have been a thing, right? Is that your screwed up level of argumentation? It seems like it.
On September 23, 1889, Fusajiro Yamauchi founded a small company called Nintendo Koppai, or the Nintendo Playing Card Company. Nintendo is a Japanese word that could be roughly translated, "It comes from heaven."
Ah, now see, that is interesting. This is an interesting point. Not really a criticism here, but kind of a point I want to make. As a literal translation of Nintendo Koppai, you could translate it to mean leave luck to heaven or leave luck to fate. But let's actually break down some of that for me, shall we? The word Koppai means playing card. So we have Nintendo playing card. So only Nintendo itself needs to be translated. Now the kanji for ten in Nintendo uses this kanji, which literally can mean heaven, but it's also used in reference to the Japanese mythical monster Tengu, which uses these kanji. Now, why does this matter? When playing cards and gambling were made illegal in Japan, the Tengu became a symbol for illegal playing cards, and gambling itself, as Tengu spirits, were symbols of mischief and sneakery. Not only this, but Tengus are famous for having very long noses, and the word nose in Japanese is hana. Hana can also mean flower, and the playing card game that Nintendo sought to create was Hanafuda cards, so named because each card has a different flower on it. Now, it was commonplace back in the gambling prohibition days that when Japanese men wanted to secretly play cards and gamble, they would rub their noses as a sign to each other as to what they were seeking. So imagine you go to a Japanese secret gambling house, and while talking to the owner, you rub your nose. This is the sign you want to play cards. And if you say the word 10 in reference to the Tengu, then the message was clear that you were seeking to gamble. Combining the hana and 10 creates a secret message, which is in reference to Nintendo that Nintendo was likely going for. Now, we know what the 10 means and what it references. So now nin and do combine to create a different meaning. Do often refers to a sanctuary or temple or way, while nin can have many different meanings. For example, it could also mean to freely do, in which case Nintendo could be translated as the temple of free gambling, which makes a lot more sense when you understand the history of gambling card games in Japan and the history of the company. Yes, in a direct translation, it could mean leave luck to heaven or fate, but subtly, it could probably have a very different meaning. The truth is, we just don't know. I wanted to get that out of the way. This isn't a criticism of LED or anything. It's just something I thought I'd share because I thought it was a very interesting bit of trivia that I had learned not too long ago. Thought I'd share that. Anyway, let's move on.
Nintendo's first venture was making handmade Hanafuda cards, but over time, this expanded into a line of vacuum cleaners, even into a taxi cab service, a love hotel chain, and toys similar to this love tester from 1978. But their success didn't begin until Shigeru Miyamoto, an engineer by trade, made his first game for Nintendo in the 1970s, Donkey Kong.
It's kind of like filmmaking, where there's certain rules of editing and composition, and you have to go back to the early filmmakers, like D.W. Griffith or later Orson Welles, to find the guys who really made those rules that we all follow today. In video games, the guy who's responsible for all this is Shigeru Miyamoto.
Shigeru Miyamoto was hired by Nintendo in 1977. They hired him to design the artwork that goes on the side of game cabinets.
Yeah, he worked as a staff artist. He's intellectually curious, always seeing what was going on. And then in 1979, he actually had his first shot at designing a game.
At this point, Nintendo's trying to break into America, and so they try to do this with a game called Radar Scope. Now, it didn't go over so well, so they ended up having like a few thousand of these cabinets left.
So, in desperation, they looked at this, young artist and said, hey, you know what? You want to make a game? We got all these Radar Scope machines. See what you can do. We got nothing else to lose.
Take all these Radar Scope parts, we got the cabinets, the joysticks, the screens, just reprogram them, make your own game, let's see what happens.
So, Miyamoto gets to work, and out comes Donkey Kong.
Not only was Donkey Kong a runaway success, it also introduced to the world Nintendo's first superstar character, Super Mario.
Mario! Mario!
As popularity of Nintendo increased, it spread all across America. Now, when Nintendo releases a new game, people of all ages, from all over the world, are all too eager to run to the store to buy it. What began as nothing more than a hobby has become a worldwide obsession.
Are you going to say anything? Are we really just going to watch this ad play? Really? Is this all we're doing? Move on. We get it. We get it. It's an ad. We get it. Kids like video games. End. Stop!
Okay, Boost! Give me strength!
The handmade Hanafuda cards made by Nintendo can be traced back to the dragon cards from Portugal, which can in turn be traced back to a very early form of the tarot card deck. Called by names like the Devil's Bible and the Devil's Picture Book, tarot cards are common among occultists and spiritualists. Tarot cards are most famous for fortune-telling, and what we currently call the modern playing deck of cards actually is derived from these cards. As stated before, common playing cards have 4 suits: spades, hearts, clubs, and diamonds, and all of these suits can be found in an earlier form in the tarot card deck. These are cups, wands, pentacles, and swords, which are also a modified form of the suits found in the Dragon cards deck. Although playing cards have gained wide acceptance as an innocent game, they can still be used as tools of divination, as seen in this Michael Vubel painting, The Fortune Teller.
You know what, and that is all very fascinating and interesting to learn, but sir, I hope you realize just what you're doing. You are insinuating that, even though playing cards used today are most commonly used for the purpose of leisure, gambling, or recreation, because they could be used for divination or fortune-telling, they are still representative of the occult, and as a result, we cannot use them or possess them. You are aware, I hope, how ludicrous that line of thinking is, right? Please, tell me you're not actually trying to say that just because something can be used for evil, it must therefore be avoided. It's rationale like that that leads to people arguing against the Second Amendment too, and that's just as stupid. Please tell me you're not actually making that argument.
And not only are modern playing cards usable for divination, even the cards Nintendo makes, the Hanafuda cards, can be used for divination as well.
Were a gift to me by my cousin. They are from Korea, although their origins are Japanese. These little tiny cards come in a nice hard case. They are made of hard plastic, which is quite different to me than using tarot, which are typically made of paper. So the Hanafuda cards are most popularly used as a gambling game, but they can also be used for divination or fortune-telling.
Okay, note what the fortune teller lady said there. They are most popularly used for gambling. Most popularly used, as in that's their primary function. Even your source is acknowledging the primary purpose of these cards is not for evil. Please keep that in mind.
Deuteronomy 18:10-12 is very clear on this issue. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, or one who practices witchcraft, or a soothsayer, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. For all who do these things are an abomination unto the Lord.
Alright, I want to take a moment to address this before we go any further. Whenever angry LED apologists want to harass me or call out my faith, they love to throw this verse at me to show where the Bible says that magic is an abomination, full stop. Yes, I do not doubt this verse, and I'm well aware of its message, but there are a few things I want to make clear. Number one, I have not practiced, nor do I support real-world magic, or divination, or spiritualistic practices. You can search through every video I've ever made, and you'll never find me saying that I support real-world magic. Number two, let's discuss this. Why does this verse say what it does? Why does the Bible condemn magic? Well, it's simple. Because in this world, supernatural feats don't just happen. We are incapable of them. If we perform a supernatural feat, they come from a source. If someone performed something supernatural otherworldly, then it was the result of one of these sources, either God or Satan, because only God or Satan can allow you to perform supernatural feats. When Moses parted the Red Sea, when Elijah called down fire on the altar, and when Joshua's army knocked down the walls of Jericho, those are all supernatural feats, performed by God as the source. Divination and other actions talked about in Deuteronomy, like magic and witchcraft, are supernatural deeds performed with Satan as the source. That is how it works in the real world. There are only two sources for supernatural power, God and Satan, the miraculous and the satanic. And God wants to make sure you're not going over to the satanic to get your power. Now, however, with that in mind, that's the real world. In the world of dreams, make-believe, imagination, fantasy, the rules work differently. In Lord of the Rings, there is no Jesus, there is no Satan, there is no Adonai, there is no Israel, there is no heaven and hell as we understand it. There are things in the world that do not exist in ours, like orcs, elves, and dragons. This world has different sources of supernatural power, and thus the rules of these worlds are fundamentally different. Deuteronomy has nothing to do with these worlds. Therefore, it cannot and should not be used to condemn these worlds that have no relationship to it. Now, some would say, well, that doesn't matter because these are fictional, and fictional things are lies anyway. Then in that case, Jesus was a liar because he told parables, which were stories meant to teach a message. And if your argument is that anything fictional is still a lie, then I hope you're prepared to call Jesus a liar since he told fictional stories as a means to teach something. And number three, the third point I'll make. Divination, while clearly wrong in the Bible, is not the result of a tool, but the result of a will. You cannot accidentally worship God or accidentally worship the devil. Worship and devotion are not accidental things, but purposeful choices we make. Owning a deck of playing cards or Hanafuda cards does not automatically mean I run the risk of worshiping Satan or performing divination. I have to make a conscious choice to use those cards for that purpose. I hope I'm making myself clear here. I understand the Deuteronomy verse you're sharing, but do not use this verse to condemn an innocent deck of playing cards or an innocent novel series written about worlds and rules that do not connect to our real world. Okay? We good? We good now. Can people stop throwing this verse at me like they think it makes a point? Okay? We're good? All right. Let's get on with it.
You see, it's quite easy to take something occult like the tarot cards and over time modify them until they gain acceptance. Is it possible that modern games could have links to the occult as well? Perhaps, just like the tarot cards, something occult is slipping into our homes, completely unnoticed.
There, that right there is what I'm talking about. You assume that the modern deck of playing cards we have today are occult in nature, but have been modified so that we just don't realize it. You make it sound like they wanted to sneak it by us, that some cultists back in the past were saying, yeah, people are kind of catching on to our tarot card shtick, so let's remodel them into something different, and that way they'll still be worshiping the occult and have no idea. What if it was the other way around? What if instead people were saying, hey, you know, lots of people like playing card games, but they don't like the fact that tarot can be connected to cult stuff. So let's make a new set of cards that are similar but have no connection to the occult, and thus give people a recognizable but more innocent set of cards. LED, your goal is always to assume malicious intent in everything, and that's why no one should trust what you have to say. And like I said before, you cannot accidentally worship the occult. You cannot be tricked into it, because worship is a conscious choice you make. But I suppose I'll at least give you credit that you're being consistent. So, will you say at the end of the video we should get rid of our decks of playing cards too? Wait a minute. Hold on a second. I just remembered something. I just remembered this. In your Lewis and Tolkien video, the pastor you had on with you said, Quote,
Right.
It's like,
Right.
they beat up my mother. How can I go hang out with them and play pool and play cards with somebody that beat my mother up in the parking lot?
he plays with cards. There it is. He uses occult cards. Call him out. Condemn that pastor. He is using occult cards. Oh, and you know what? If you've ever gone outside to look at the stars with your family, like stargazing, you know that stars have been used for divination as well. Yeah, you know, astrology, stargazing, star maps, that's evil. No more stargazing. Bones, too. Chicken bones have been used for divination. Never eat bone meat again. You could accidentally get the bones and start using divination. So do not accidentally worship Satan by eating boned meat. And tea leaves have been used to predict the future. So you cannot drink tea again. Tea is satanic. And you know what? Let's go even more dangerous. What about the palm of your own hand? Palm reading? Ever heard of that? You son of a bitch. You have palms on both of your hands. You're doubly satanic. Burn him. Burn him.
It was so easy for the tarot cards to find entrance into our homes, from an occult deck of cards to the modern-day playing deck cards. Would you really be surprised if the same thing didn't happen with the digital games of our time? History repeats itself. That which has been is what will be. That which has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes 1:9. We should not be surprised to find that the exact same thing that happened in the past will happen again in the future.
Ecclesiastes 1 is the everything is meaningless chapter. Basically, the author is lamenting how, without God, nothing has any meaning. Ecclesiastes 1:9 is pointing out how nothing new ever comes, and even the things we perceive as new is all the same because life is never ending a meaningless cycle. It's one of the most depressing parts of the Bible to read because of how grim it is. The verse has nothing to do with how people will keep sinning in the same way throughout history. And we already know that to be true because of what's said in Genesis. But can we get back to Nintendo now, please? You kind of went off on this tangent about playing cards. I thought this video was about Nintendo.
So does Nintendo have a policy on religion? Well, in the 90s, Nintendo would censor games based on this list of 10 rules. It's the closest thing that can be found to a policy on religion. Rule number 7 is very clear about what Nintendo games could portray. It says, must not reflect ethnic, religious, nationalistic, or sexual stereotypes of language. This includes symbols that are related to any type of racial, religious, nationalistic, or ethnic groups such as crosses, pentagrams, God, gods, Satan, hell, Buddha. Nintendo was very clear that they did not want to insult any religious group, and they were very careful about what they would allow into any Nintendo games. So here's an example of Nintendo censorship. Can you guess what's been removed? The Japanese original of this game actually had a cross on the sign for the hospital. And this Disney game has been censored by having the crosses removed from the coffins. Notice this church steeple. In the Japanese original, there used to be a cross. And in this church interior, the stained glass window also used to be a cross. But Nintendo hasn't always followed by their own rules. You'd think from this that Nintendo had no intention of including religion in their games at all. But then one day, that changed forever.
Now you're playing with power.
In 1986, Nintendo unveiled The Legend of Zelda, which took these same rules and threw them out the window. Notice that the main character has a cross on his shield similar to a medieval crusader. Why was this cross not censored? Perhaps Nintendo was not afraid of religious content after all. In fact, the religious content of this game doesn't end there. Notice that among the hero's loot, there is a yellow book. What is that book? The game's instruction booklet actually has the answer. It says, this is the wand that Wizrobe uses. Wave it to let loose magic spells. What's more, if Link picks up the magic book and learns some new spells, he can chant some fiery spells and send out flames. As you can see, in English, this book is titled The Magic Book, but the original Japanese title was the Bible. But could The Legend of Zelda be subtly attempting to reduce the Bible to an occult book of magic?
Whoa, time out. Wait, are you serious? Okay, I never played the Legend of Zelda games that much, so I don't know a whole lot about them, but is this accurate? So wait, the original Link had a crusader shield with a cross on it, and had a Bible that when he read from it gave him the power to shoot holy fire and burn his enemies? Okay, Link is freaking based, man. Oh my god, like, dude, that's awesome. Link scorching filthy heretics with Elijah style up in here. Ooh, Link read up on Moses and Elijah and said, bro, let me get some of that divine power. That is so freaking cool. Link is so much cooler now to me. That's epic, man. Link is actually based, dude. That's freaking awesome. Please tell me he has that in later games, because this is like the earlier games. Please tell me he gets that in later games. I want to see Link walking around, seeing like these monsters or enemies coming out, and he just whips out that book and says, In nomine Patri et Spiritus et Spiritus Sancti. Just someone's on fire and starts burning them. Burn, heretic! I just see Link now doing that. That is so cool.
The official Nintendo statement is that The Legend of Zelda is based on fantasy, and that all of the religious content in the game has no basis in reality. But if that's true, why does official Nintendo artwork depict the main character praying before Jesus Christ on a crucifix? Perhaps there's more beneath the surface in Nintendo's games than they let on.
Okay, it's official. Link is the most Chad Nintendo character ever. Totally beats Mario in every way. Absolute based Giga Chad Link up in here, saving Hyrule from the filthy infidels and heretics. Wait, it just occurred to me. Isn't Ganondorf the main bad guy a Gerudo, which are like desert-dwelling people? Link really is on a crusade. That is so awesome. Did Japan even know what they were doing? Oh, that's so cool. Oh, Link, you're awesome. I need to play Legend of Zelda now. Oh, no, in all seriousness, okay, I can actually probably explain this. So, the rules you mentioned, that rule about the addressing religion and stuff, it's the policy of Nintendo of America, the American localization company who works to make Nintendo-released games marketable in Japan. See, Japan wanted to model Zelda off of medieval European crusaders and fantasy elements, hence why he prays to a cross. He has a Bible, has a Crusader shield, and he fights demonic entities. He's a stereotype Crusader hero, just more elf-like. The reason they named his book The Bible and other such things is because Japan was paying homage and respect to iconography of the medieval age, whereas American localizers were worried it would be taken the wrong way by, well, people like you, LED. Now, me personally, I think that's pretty awesome that when one reads the Bible and meditates on God's word, God grants them the power to stand up to the armies of darkness and to the enemies of God's children. For us, it manifests in apologetics and missions work. But for Zelda, it manifests in burning the heathen in holy fire. As far as I'm concerned, Link is based.
Nintendo is in a large regard one of the most influential game companies in the world. While there are other companies like Sony and Microsoft, even these companies got their start by copying the successes of Nintendo. In the investigation of the influences these games have on the person playing them, it's very valuable to have insider information on the inspiration behind the games. Very rarely will Nintendo ever discuss direct inspiration for their games, but in one instance, an interview on Nintendo's own website, Wii.com, Shigeru Miyamoto decided to explain the genesis of the Super Mario Bros. Franchise. Having rigorously analyzed what exactly made people want to play one more time, I sketched out the idea for 5 games. At this point, Nintendo was the licensee for Popeye. I asked if I could make a game using Popeye. The basic concept of Popeye is that there is the hero and his rival, who he manages to turn the tables on with the aid of spinach. It's identical to Pac-Man. This basically boils down to Mario being a replacement for Popeye. Mario was intended to be Popeye at one point, but it just didn't work out for whatever reason. Mario is Popeye and Pac-Man, but repackaged. This chart should illustrate this clearly. In each of these 3 stories, there is a hero, a female lead character, and a weapon that the hero uses to destroy the enemy. Popeye saves olive oil with spinach from Bluto. This spinach gives Popeye superhuman or almost godlike strength. In fact, it seems that there's nothing Popeye can't do when he eats spinach.
Okay, did you guys catch that? Did you catch that? Did you catch what he just said? Oh, LED. Oh, LED, you are not actually doing this. You cannot be doing this, LED. Please say you're not actually doing this.
Pac-Man also follows the same pattern, and somehow by eating power pellets, he is given almost superhuman or godlike strength to defeat ghosts. Once again, a godlike power.
No! You're actually doing this! You can't be this stupid, LED! You can't actually be this desperately stupid! No! Please say you're joking! Please say this is a joke!
Mario saves a princess with a mushroom from a dragon. Now notice that all of these weapons are essentially something that A, gives the hero superhuman or godlike qualities, and B, are items that the character must put within themselves. In this case, all of them are food. This is food that makes you into a god.
Yes, and this is just like how in your view of Gnosticism, the serpent offered the fruit to Adam and Eve that would make them like God, right? Right!
But wasn't there a place in the Bible where a serpent said that if someone ate a piece of fruit, they would be like God? Yes, that's exactly what happened. In Genesis, the deceiving serpent told Eve if she ate from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, she would become like God. Because Eve doubted God, humanity had to be separated from their home in Eden and from the direct presence of God. Because they fell for his trick, evil came upon this world, all because he convinced Eve to eat a piece of fruit, and that fruit could transform her into a god. But these stories come from the angle that eating fruit that turns you into a god is good, just like Gnosticism, which teaches that the serpent saved us from God with an apple.
Hey YouTubers, thanks for watching. We have so much...
LED, you are a bunch of desperate, predictable fearmongers. You have no integrity or honesty in your body, and you're blatantly lying and using manipulative language to sell your idiocy. When I say you are like the Pharisees in the olden days, I meant it. All that is not the way you see it is evil. All that is secular is satanic. Every story is secretly about satanic principles. I proved in your C.S. Lewis and Tolkien video that you lied about C.S. Lewis and Tolkien being a part of a cult, and I shall now prove that you are being dishonest here again. So, for each of the foods you listed for Popeye, Pac-Man, and Mario, you claimed all of them make you a god or give you godlike qualities. This was a blatant misuse of language to sell your narrative, and it is cringeworthy. By that logic, if an athlete takes steroids or performance-enhancing drugs, are they being like God? See, Popeye eats spinach and it gives him the power to beat Bluto, but it does not make him a god. He does not have the power or rules of God. Pac-Man eats a power pellet and then can defeat the ghost by eating them, but that is not a godlike quality, nor is the power of God. Mario is even less of a good example, as Mario eats the mushrooms and simply grows bigger. This does not make him like God. In fact, LED, did you guys notice this? In LED, you were so aware of this pitiful example, they're the only ones you don't even say what the mushroom does to Mario when he eats it. Notice how in all the others, they say what the spinach does to Popeye, and they say what the power pellet does to Pac-Man. They don't say what the mushroom does to Mario. Did y'all notice that?
This spinach gives Popeye superhuman or almost godlike strength. Pac-Man also follows the same pattern, and somehow by eating power pellets, he is given almost superhuman or godlike strength to defeat ghosts. Once again, a godlike power. Mario saves a princess with a mushroom from a dragon. Now notice that all of these weapons are...
They don't say what happens when Mario eats it, because you're aware, LED, that just growing larger does not in any way sound like a godlike quality. You were so aware that this was a shitty argument, you couldn't even bring yourself to say what the mushrooms do for Mario. This is ridiculous. And the whole serpent thing. The serpent said to Eve, "What did God actually say you could eat any fruit in the garden?" And Eve says, "We can eat any fruit except for this one, because God says that if we eat it or even touch it, we will die." And the serpent said, "You won't die. God just knows that if you eat it, you will be able to see the world like he does and make you more like God." And so Eve falls for it and eats it and then offers it to Adam, and that's how they fall. This doesn't even work in context, because think about it. Popeye has to eat the spinach. Pac-Man has to eat the power pellets. Mario has to eat the mushroom. The serpent doesn't eat the fruit. He gets Adam and Eve to eat the fruit. It still doesn't work. This isn't a good connection. You know it's not a good connection, but you're going to try to force it anyway. But let's keep going. The Gnosticism angle. Okay, in almost every video I've looked at, you have brought up Gnosticism, and I don't think you actually know what that means. Gnosticism as a story theme does not involve just the reversal of God and Satan. That's called Satanism or contrarianism. It's what's talked about in shit like Paradise Lost, okay? Gnosticism, when used in writing as a literary theme, is the idea that the world as we know it is an illusion or fabrication, and the story is about the main character resisting the fabrication or illusionary world to discover the truth world beyond it. A good example is The Truman Show, a story in which a man has spent his whole life as the main character of a TV show and has no idea. He thinks the world he lives in is real until he starts to notice cracks in the performance, in subtle problems he never did before. He eventually learns that his whole life has been a simulation, that he's been manipulated and led around by the producers and creators of his own show and the audience who watches him. And another good example is The Matrix, a story about how all of humanity is trapped in a simulation orchestrated by robotic overlords, and only a few know the truth, and they're using their knowledge that the world is an illusion to overcome their overlords and break free of their shackles. Gnosticism is about recognizing the illusionary nature of reality and overcoming the overlords that keep us imprisoned to this reality. Now, it can be, and often is, used as an anti-God propaganda piece, like the Golden Compass, but this is not always their function. Simply swapping the moralistic nature of Satan and God is not, in and of itself, Gnostic. In fact, it's quite contrarian and considered boring by most standards today. There are even jokes about how every New Age urban fantasy or sci-fi or spiritual story now is about how God is actually evil and how Satan is actually the good guy now. Everyone's doing it. It's old hat now. Now, this graph of yours to demonstrate how Popeye, Pac-Man, and Mario are all similar to each other is a unique outlook, okay, but let's be honest, there isn't anything new here. It's not like Nintendo was trying to do this specifically because, ooh, if we do this, we'll be able to make God out to look evil. That wasn't their goal, and you know it's not their goal. What is this? It's the power-up food trope in fiction writing. We see it in hundreds of other things. Like Underdog saves Sweet Polly Purebred from Simon Bar Sinister by eating his Underdog Super Energy Pill. Izuku Midoriya saves the world from All for One by eating All Might's hair, which gives him the powers of One for All. Monkey D. Luffy saves his crew from their oppressors by eating the Gum Gum fruit, which makes him a rubber man. Natsu Dragneel saves Lucy from Gazio by eating fire, which increases his Dragon Slayer magic.
Eat all the fire you want, but you're still not gonna beat me!
In Hoodwinked, the squirrel saves Little Red Riding Hood and company by drinking coffee and going super speed to inform the police of what's happening.
Go get him, boy.
In Alice in Wonderland, Alice grows bigger or smaller to save herself based on the things she eats and drinks. And probably the most famous of all, Scooby-Doo saves the day by eating Scooby snacks, giving him the courage or power to be brave in the face of danger. So, LED, are you prepared to say that all of these are all representations of your Gnostic stupidity? Want to know the funny thing, LED? The fact that you seem to claim all these things, Star Wars, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, all these things, you say all these things are Gnostic, all these things are Gnostic and trying to reverse God and Satan, doesn't that disprove your argument? The fact that everything and everyone is all about this Gnosticism, it's Hollywood, it's Lucasfilms, it's anime, it's Akira Toriyama, all of them are secretly planning this Gnostic turnaround. Don't you think that's a little bit conspiracy theory level stuff? I'll calm down now. Okay. Let's be very clear here. I got to wrap this up. Let's be very clear here, LED. I said it before and I'll say it again. You remind me of the Pharisees from the Bible. And look at the woes of the Pharisees that Jesus lay out, particularly in Luke 11:46. Quote, Jesus replied, "And you experts in the law, woe to you, because you load people down with burdens they can hardly carry, and you yourselves will not lift one finger to help them." Every video I respond to you, LED, does the same thing. You criticize the entertainment we enjoy as wicked and evil and are not afraid to fabricate information or use misleading language to create your case. You associate Satan with everything in order to spark fear in your congregation because you know that they're afraid of the devil and know that as long as you can thinly associate Satan with it, you can make people afraid of it. And you demean those who enjoy or partake in things that you don't approve of, resorting them down to an other outlier. And worst of all, you constantly attack media like Dragon Ball Z, Star Wars, and now Nintendo with accusations of Gnosticism without any understanding of the shows or games you criticize, without any desire to learn or understand these things, and simply declare the good characters as allegories for Satan and the villain characters allegories for God so that you can sell your message. And to that I say, Isaiah 5:20, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, and who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. I hesitate to even speculate what you would recommend, LED, to these poor lost souls who enjoy Star Wars, Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, Nintendo, video games, and fantasy books. For people who indulge in movies, music, excitement, and adventure, what would you tell them to replace it all with? What should a man do when he's not in church? What can a man do with his life? What is he allowed to do by your knowledge? What can he do? Maybe he could try watching or playing a sport event, No, he can't do that. Don't you know that sports are about competition? And the Bible says in Philippians 2:3-4, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interests of others. See, therefore we can't compete because we have to be humble and consider other people more significant than us. So that wouldn't be humble. So that's wrong. So what about, we can have a collection. There's nothing wrong with collecting things and feeling proud of our collection, right? I mean, I collect swords after all. Isn't that cool? Ha! Foolishness! For have you not read in Luke 14:33, therefore any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. So we shouldn't even own anything, right? We shouldn't have a collection. We shouldn't own anything. We need to renounce everything we have. See? I can use verses at random and out of context as well to sell anything I want. But that's not how one should use the Bible or read it. If you wish to save people from the evils of this world, first you have to understand these things that you're calling evil. Learn about the ones you criticize. For when you understand what it is they believe and practice, you can better reach them. That's why I study other religions, faiths, and their arguments. I do so to better understand these cultures, faiths, and tenets so that in time, I might reach them. I don't rush to condemn them. I do not seek to belittle anyone for their beliefs, interests, or desires. I seek to save them from them. I don't walk up to the person who believes in Gnosticism or Buddhism or Hinduism and say, you're evil and wrong and you need to repent. I don't do that. I try to understand where they're coming from so that in time I can start to lead them to Christ. For as it is written, John 3:17, for God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. LED, if your heart is only seeking to condemn the world, and you make no effort to share salvation, then are you doing the work of God or your own work? Unless LED releases something new that really blows my mind or really comes off as awful, I think this is it. I have no further interest in responding to LED. This will be the last video I do about them, okay? I'm tired. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.